The 2020 NFL Draft is almost in the books. The Bengals have made, to this point, 6 picks that highly affect their roster in a good way. We're almost done. We're going to bring you the last pick here on the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. I'm Anthony Cosenza, and for the first time, we have the triumvirate together, the mighty triumvirate. We've done a lot of separate shows. We did the big roundtable with Zim and Ace Boogie, but not yet with us three, really. Great to have. Yeah, that's right. Great to have you both with me, John Sheeran, my usual co-host, and Matt Minich, host of Chalk Talk, joining us as well. We're going to talk about what the Bengals have done with their draft picks in their draft class, break it all down, give some favorites, and obviously we will announce when the Bengals go on the board here, probably in about 15 or so minutes. They will be making what seems to be their final pick, unless something weird happens and they want to get another 7th-round pick for some reason, but I don't see that happening.
No.
I know. It's been a fun weekend, but it's been a long weekend for all of us. And just quickly, thank you both for all the work you've done, not only for the podcast side, but also for Cincy Jungle. You guys have been doing an immense amount of work, so I can't thank you both enough. By the way, in case you can't tell, we've all got the draft lids going. And New Era has been a partner of this program as well. So they were kind enough to get us those hats. Unfortunately, they got to John and Matt a little later than I would have liked because I had to send them forward. But they got them just in time for the draft to be done. So our thanks to New Era and the draft gear. Go get their draft hats. Celebrate the Bengals draft class in style with New Era caps.
I was a blocking tight end, so I'm a day 3 pick anyway.
There you go. Well,
let's just in time for me.
Yeah, there you go. Well, let's start. Great segue, Matt. I love it. So let's talk. Obviously, we want to talk about Burrow and Higgins and Logan Wilson, but I think maybe we start focusing a bit more on what the team has done today on the final day. So, Matt, I'll start with you. The Bengals double-dipped at linebacker with Akeem Davis-Gaither. They somewhat surprisingly grabbed the Notre Dame edge player with the 5th-round pick, and then they went offensive tackle Hakeem Adeniji, a guy that was on your day 3 targets for the Bengals. How do you think the Bengals have done so far with their 3 picks, the 4th yet to be determined?
I'm pretty impressed. I got to go back and look a little bit more at Khalid Kareem. I watched him and I graded him out right. Basically, I put him at the 4th to 5th round range, so kind of right where he ended up. But from my notes and what I remember of him, I think he's just one of those guys you can't really complain too much about him. Like, he's not super exciting or dynamic in any way, but he's pretty solid all around. So I think I tweeted something about comparing him to Sam Hubbard, and that's kind of what I meant. It was like, Sam Hubbard's a guy that you can do a lot of stuff with, and he's going to be pretty dependable for you for the most part. But he's probably never going to be a 10-sack guy or necessarily going to Pro Bowls or anything like that. But he's a guy that's going to be a part of your defense. That's going to be important. So getting Akeem in there, great value. I really like that linebacker group has been completely made over. Because Wilson can move. He can, Wilson can fly. Akeem can fly. So that's huge. Like, in free agency, they completely made over the secondary, and in the draft, they completely made over the linebacker core with guys who can cover. So, we should be much better in coverage once they get these rookies on board and in there. So that's pretty exciting. And then, Hakeem's been my guy for a while. I think he's a tremendous athlete. This is a guy, he's a 4-year starter at left tackle for Kansas. He has had 4 different offensive line coaches. So, you think 4-year starter, but he's a developmental guy, that doesn't seem to add up. He's had 4 different coaches. So he's been taught a lot of different things. Getting him he's going to take a little bit of time to get kind of cleaned up. I saw Lindsay Patterson, friend of the pod. She tweeted that Callahan says he's going to play guard and tackle. So that would be that would make sense to me to probably just leave him on one side of the field, give him a shot at tackle because this is a more valuable position. But if not, you always kick him inside the guard. And I think the way his athletic ability in the man schemes that John did a great piece on how we switched over to more down gap, man blocking type schemes. In those types of schemes that the Bengals are running, I think he's going to be a great fit.
Well, I want to get more on your thoughts on Adeniji and his potential, especially as it pertains to him potentially getting a starting job or a high-profile role with the Bengals on the offensive line as soon as 2020. But I know he was a guy that you looked at, and there is a lot of athleticism to note there. I did a little research on him before I kick it to you, John. I did a little research on him. I think he had 30-plus, close to 40 pressures given up as a freshman starter at left tackle. Cut that down, improved steadily each year, and cut it down to, I think, just 5 as a senior. Pretty good progress there. Again, Kansas not a football powerhouse by any stretch, but did play against some high profile teams and seemed to steadily improve and showed a lot of athleticism on tape. And now you've got a guard, tackle, versatile player there. John, you, as the day began, I saw a tweet where, you were kind of noting maybe some emojis about certain players that the Bengals were talking about. Akeem Davis-Gaither was one of them. I want to get your thoughts on what you think that pick means for the team, the value that the Bengals got in the 4th round with him. And I also want to ask you what your concern about the injury history is between the foot and the reports on the knee. Is this something that we should be, extremely worried about immediately, or is this more, hey, that's something that's going to maybe be affecting him more 3 years down the road? Let's enjoy the pick now.
I'm not a doctor, and most of them are dealing with more important issues at this moment. But if the Bengals were confident enough to, if they were confident enough to take him here, I think that because he wasn't the only player that was going into this draft with major injury concerns. Prince Tega Wanogo, who is still available right now, apparently his knee injury is a lot worse than we thought. He's still available. So, if the Bengals didn't take him, I'm assuming he probably would have gone off pretty soon off the board if that was the consensus with his medical. It's concerning, obviously, and it's going to be a concern until he's able to string together, multiple weeks, maybe years without it being an issue. I think it's the same type of knee injury that Sony Michel suffered when he first became with the Patriots. I think Matt might know a little bit more about that because he's in the Northeast region. But the value is obviously great. That's literally the only question you have with this pick. I don't know about Pro Football Focus's comparison to Jalen Smith, but if that name is being thrown around there, it's obviously it's warranted to a certain degree. He flies around the field, and he's only 225 pounds. I don't think the Bengals should ask him to put on any more weight because he and Logan Wilson, now you have 2 linebackers that you're comfortable with playing in your sub packages, playing in space, dropping back into deep depths and coverage, matching up with underneath routes and coverage. Great instincts as a pass defender. I think 18 career pass deflections at Appalachian State. He actually played most of his snaps last year as an edge rusher, and I think the Bengals are going to have the opportunity to put him as this unidentifiable box player that they have to deal with when they play the Ravens twice a year. And just have a guy who can be a blitzer off the edge, maybe have him on some stunts with your other edge players, but to also be maybe a quarterback spy when they play the Ravens, just be able to drop back into coverage and just run and chase as a pursuit linebacker. He fits a lot about what they were looking for at linebacker this year, and like Matt said, he's one of these new faces now of this completely revamped position group that now has a resemblance of athleticism.
Right. You've got Pratt. Let's not forget about him. You got Pratt that can do a lot of different things for your defense. You've got Bynes, kind of the veteran leadership guy, heady football player. Now you've got 2 pretty athletic guys in Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither. And the good thing is they bring you versatility and they can do different things, and you can show different formations and schemes and do a lot of different things with those guys. And that's exactly what Lou Anarumo has wanted on this. They were so limited at that position last year, and now it seems that they can do a lot of different things. And oh, by the way, a lot of people are angry about the Bengals not really addressing offensive line, but the Steelers like to run the football quite a bit and are effective at it. The Ravens and their attack with Lamar Jackson, you got to be able to contain that and have mid-tier linebacker, mid-tier defenders that are able to guard that effectively. Cleveland has guys who can run the football well for them. So, I mean, you got to have guys that can tackle you and guys that can do different things for you. Matt, you brought this up on Twitter. You kind of mentioned the facet that both Davis-Gaither and Khalid Kareem are coaches' kids, and they were team captains, I think. the emphasis on character, I don't, you being a former coach and college player, et cetera, I kind of wanted to get your insight on that. What do you think that means to this locker room? And you know what? Zach Taylor still preached character. They had a chance to take a Sadiq Charles, a guy that could probably help them right away at tackle. They said, no, thanks. They went a different route. I mean, I guess you got to kind of got to respect the fact that they're really taking into the character aspect into account here.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely looking at it a little differently than the last regime did. So, and I think especially this year, that stuff's important because, like a Willie Gay, I think some people were disappointed when they traded ahead of us to get him, and maybe he was in the works for round 3. But, that's a guy that you're going to have some questions about. And when there's questions like that, people generally feel better, whether it means anything or not, but feel better about it if you can talk to the guy and shake his hand and look him in the eye. So, I can see where they would slip down for that reason. But yeah, I mean, definitely having more leaders, having team captains, having guys from, winning traditions and, that are used to being winners and we're raised a certain way by coaches that, have that expectation. I think there's definitely a lot of positives there.
So this is the Orange and Black Insider with Bengals podcast, a special episode, not only wrapping up the NFL draft, but special because you got the three of us together giving you our perspectives on the draft as it closes up here. The Bengals will be on the clock shortly. We'll be taking you up to that pick, announcing it on the air, talking about the class a little bit beyond that, and then we're closing up shop for draft weekend and letting everybody, including my esteemed co-hosts, enjoy their weekend and soak in what looks to be a good draft class so far for the Cincinnati Bengals. John, you do a lot of research on the analytics side. Look, the Cincinnati Bengals, I put a tweet out last night. Joe Burrow, I think he had the highest quarterback PFF score that they've ever had historically at the position. You had a 91 overall grade for T. Higgins. That was before the championship game. And then you had a 90-plus grade for overall grade for Logan Wilson. There's high 80s grades for Davis-Gaither as a pass rusher the past 2 seasons. Basically, what I'm getting at is the Bengals seem to be emphasizing a little bit more of the analytics side of things than they have in years past. Do you think that, number one, that's accurate? Number two, that it's because of this new coaching staff, or number three, because of the COVID crisis, and they have to rely on that stuff a bit more?
I think they're prioritizing production, and that kind of goes with it. When I say production, I don't just mean volume stats. I mean market share relative to team production. Joe Burrow has the production of a multiple Pro Bowl quarterback. That he was going to be the pick regardless, but He has the potential to be something special, which is what they intended to be. For how old T. Higgins is, he was pretty productive as well. You would like to think that had he come back to Clemson, he could have maybe produced a little bit more in that offense. But I think considering how old he was and how much more he could develop into, I think he has the production of a future starter. Every one of these picks, like they were productive in college, and their production is indicative of them becoming some long-term starters. And I think that's great if you have multiple of them all throughout the draft. Khalid Kareem, I think, he was actually the more productive edge rusher compared to his teammate Julian Okwara, who I think went a couple rounds ahead of him.
Right.
So he was productive at Notre Dame. Akeem Davis-Gaither was productive at App State. Logan Wilson was productive at Wyoming. And you want guys who, don't play against great strength of schedules, don't play great conferences, to be dominant against that competition. I think both those guys fit the bill there. You can't really, measure production unless you want to go into the PFF side at offensive line, but at least Akeem was experienced at multiple offensive line positions and has the athleticism to be versatile along the entire offensive line. So I would agree with that. I think they've mostly aligned with a lot of PFF grades in recent years in terms of drafting, but I think they just went out and got a bunch of guys who I think it can become long-term starters. And you may not have multiple Pro Bowls in this draft, but I think in terms of making safe bets, sticking to some of the best players on their board and getting guys who were good in college and put on good tape, I think they did a great job at that.
And that's go ahead, Matt. Yeah,
go ahead. Off of that. So it's interesting because Anthony, what you're talking about, I believe, is PFF's actual player grades, like their Yeah. And generally when we talk about analytics, we're talking about the things that John brought up.
Right.
We're talking about market share and production, things along those lines. So when you look at the two and when they're doing well in both of them, like it shows you that like they're doing what the coaches want them to do, but then they're also having those things that are marks of high success. Because the grades that you mentioned, like Luke Meadows, the offensive line coach at Kansas, he was grading Akeem's film every single week, just like the guys at PFF were. So from a coaching standpoint, like even the old school guys that are anti-analytics or wwhatever, they're not really, because they're doing all that stuff. Yeah. So it's great too when you see that they're coming in and they have both of those things. That they're showing. It's really those grades. That's their film. That's their film. Aside from the the film projection, we're like, oh, he's twitchy. He's doing his job. So this is showing that these guys are doing their job. They are effective at what they're doing. And they've got all those things, like John's pointing out, that are highly predictive and showing that they're likely to be successful in the future.
Yeah, I may have misspoke a little bit in what I titled that, but I guess I'm just kind of using that as a broad scope type of approch in the fact.
Sure, yeah, no, I got you. I'm just because and it's all PFF and everything PFF does. Remember, everything PFF does gets worked in as analytics, and really analytics is information. So like everything is analytics. But yeah, but I'm just saying from both to anybody who like turns out they're having like, I don't want to hear about the numbers and stuff. Like when you're talking about that stuff, that's the film. And that's showing that they're doing their job. Which is especially big with these defensive players when you're playing the Ravens.
Right, exactly. And it's something that jumped out to me because in years past it just seemed like they were guys that more fit they selected players that more fit a player profile that they had built up in the past. Your big, strong, the offensive lineman who could bench a bunch, right? Mm-hmm. For instance, but they don't have great feet or great technique, but they're very, very strong. Well, now it's more tape, watching the tape driven. The PFF scores are tying into these productive players. And you're seeing that they're taking players that have productive careers and are versatile. They're not set in on certain specific player profiles, which is really refreshing to see. They didn't even do this really last year because I think they had such a late start on everything with the coaching staff. Sure. They kind of just said, well, we like some of these players. Let's kind of rush together this process and get players. And I think that you saw that by some of the ineffectiveness of some of the players when they got out on the field last year. I want to get to this here, and we're a few picks away from the Bengals taking the clock. I think they are on pick 208 right now. Green Bay and the Bengals go on at 217. John, what's your favorite pick so far of the six in terms of value, position, need? I mean, I know Burrow's probably the easy one to go with, but do you have a specific one maybe that you're saying, yeah, I really like this for the Cincinnati Bengals?
I don't think they necessarily made a bad pick. So whatever you want to go is fine. It's really your preference. I think I lean towards Davis-Gaither, and because the only question mark there is the injury. Like, obviously, Joe Burrow's a great pick at one. Is the only pick they could have made. So I don't think they deserve any more credit than what they've been given. I think Higgins at 33 was fine. Wilson at 65 was fine. Davis-Gaither could have gone a lot earlier had he not been injured, and I think them taking a chance on that is a chance worth taking, because if he pans out, if he stays healthy, that is an asset that you can use on all three downs. It gives you exactly what you need at the position. You can do multiple things with him, and all the intangible stuff is great as well. And that's what makes a player like him. Those are the things that allow him to reach his full potential, and his potential is very high for what he is. So I would say, based off of everything that goes into evaluating the draft pick from a long-term perspective and where they were picked, Davis-Gaither is my pick.
Matt?
I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. I think that, number one, showing the commitment to the position, I thought there was a good chance. I actually think I wrote an article on this. I thought there was a good chance that they would take two linebackers. I wouldn't expect it to be bang, bang, that quick. I thought maybe the second one would be in the 6th or the 7th round. So I think showing the commitment to, like we said before, to remake that position, redefine what you're looking for in a linebacker, really. And then, just the versatility he brings. Now, in general, the 3-4 stuff that we saw last year, it was guys that we think of as defensive ends, Hubbard, Lawson, Dunlap, who were standing up on the edge. So I mean, technically, it's a 5-2 by what the personnel is. But there were times, and I don't know if this is by design, if they're trying to be deceptive with it, or if it's just they get stuck with certain personnel on the field. But there are times it would be Nick Vigil and Sean Williams that were the edges. So Akeem is a guy like that who, and he's pretty fast. He's a little bit more built like a safety too. So I mean, he's a guy that I think that you get stuck with him on the field and you want Von Bell, you're okay. In a lot of situations, I think you get stuck with him on the field and you wanted to have Tupou on there, have the extra D lineman. Well, you're going to be okay. You bump Hubbard down and you can live with that one in the 3-4 stuff. So I think having that versatility, so they can't read on our personnel and that we can adjust, especially when teams are coming out in different formations. Like they come out in one personnel and you think they're going to be spread because they have athletic tight ends, and then they come out, and they're bunching it in. You want to be in that 3-4 look to stop the run. I think the versatility that he brings is going to be really interesting. Going to be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to ask Matt this question about Khalid Kareem, who we haven't really talked about that much. He's, I think, 6'4", 263 pounds, but he's got long arms, 34-inch arms, pretty big hands. And his one big knock on him is that he's not an explosive athlete. He's not going to give you those wild plays. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it would be smart for the Bengals to beef him up to about 270, maybe even almost 280 pounds, and be that 5 technique? You could also play 3 technique instead of keeping him as an edge.
Honestly, watching this film, because after we took the pick, I went back and just turned on his highlights just to get an idea of him again. And I kind of got that idea. I was like, you know what? I think he could play inside. And then I looked at his weight and I was like, oh, maybe not. So, but yeah, I mean, if he's got a frame that can carry that without, he's not twitchy or ready, if he's not any slower off the ball, 10, 15 pounds heavier, then I'd be all for it. And I think maybe it's a different kind of versatility. Like AJ Epinesa, we had talked about him. Yeah. I thought he was a guy that could do that, but then maybe also be a stand-up guy in the edge. Going back and watching some of the games from last year, I'm doing an extensive breakdown about 10 games in, but early in the year, Andrew Brown was at 290 pounds playing stand-up, 3-4 outside linebacker at 290 pounds. So, I think there's some benefit to having that guy. If his body can handle it, he's not getting any slower. I think that would give him a different type of versatility because he looks more like a guy who should be bumping inside than a guy that should be dropping off quite a bit and stuff. And I'll have to do a deeper dig on his dive on his film, in the coming weeks to see. But at a quick glance and in my notes, I don't have anything about him dropping off into coverage, so I don't know if he does that. So having that versatility, I think it's a good idea to give it a shot.
You took the words out of my mouth with the Andrew Brown thing. I mean, there's a similar type of experiment, if you want to call it that, going on there. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Matt Minich, John Sheeran, I'm Anthony Cosenza. You have heard our shows, whether it's John and I or Matt on his own with many guests. And now you've got all 3 of us coming together talking about the NFL draft. The Bengals are closing up shop, and we will be shortly after that as well. But get the show how you can. Try and join us live if you're able. YouTube, Cincy Jungles, Facebook, however you can. If not, subscribe to our channels and get notified when we go live. Get notified when we put up new material, whether it's from Matt, whether it's from John and I, or all 3 of us. Subscribe to our channels, leave us a review. By the way, guys, we've had an immense amount of downloads and views and all kinds of stuff from our viewers. Not just this week or this weekend either. It's really been over the course of the past 2 or so months. We've really seen a gigantic spike in stuff. So we can't thank our listeners enough for all the support they've shown us. Really, for the entirety of our programming, but really, in 2020, we've seen a nice re-engagement from our fans, and I think a lot of that has to do with what the Bengals have done over the past couple of months as well. So, can't thank you guys enough. We enjoy giving you the material, so we're gonna keep giving it to you. Where do you guys think they go with this last pick here? Do you think they get another toy for Joe Burrow in terms of maybe a running back, tight end, wide receiver? Do you think they look at defensive back, which they have not taken somewhat surprisingly yet? Do you think it's offensive lineman? Where do you guys think? And whoever wants to go first, you guys go first.
Matt, you can go.
All right. Well, I'm a little behind on what's going on because I don't have the I don't have the picks up on my screen. But I mean, I think both of those make sense. I was kind of expecting them to go for a corner at some point, and I also think that getting a speed receiver could be an interesting prospect. Maybe somebody that can return some kicks too. I know that I know Reed was gone, but like. And I might throw out some names that are gone, so forgive me. But like an Isaiah Coulter from URI who has some speed.
Eagles just took Prince Tega Winogo, by the way.
All right.
Wow.
Somebody.
I think Coulter went to the Bucks a little bit earlier as well.
Did he? Okay. Yeah, man. These last few picks have been moving. So, but yeah, maybe somebody a little faster like that, and a big person that a lot of people have been talking about, and I can't claim as Parnell Motley Go.
The Tulane guy?
No, the Oklahoma guy.
Oh, I'm not sure.
So Motley's a guy, and I talked about him in my D3 options. Not invited to the combine. The only negative I've seen by anybody on him is that he's handsy. He does have a number of pass interferences as well. All right, this is awesome. So he's got some pass interferences, but this is a guy who effectively shut down Denzel Mims, Jalen Reagor, and when he was matched up on Chase didn't do much in that game either. So like this is a guy that's faced up against some big guys, and maybe he's doing some things that he might not get away with in the NFL, but smooth hippie guy that I think could be worth a shot. There's a lot of like man corners that I like in this draft that I think could be worth a shot at this point.
Don,
well, I guess that other one was like, felt like my head was never in the screen.
No, you're good. You're good.
I think they're going to go defensive back here. They met with a lot of them in the pre-draft process. I think if you look at just like a chart of what positions they talked to, I think cornerback and safety were probably two of the most. There's a couple of guys from the Senior Bowl. I think Javaris Davis, I think is his name, the cornerback from Auburn. He's still able. They actually worked him out before COVID-19 tore everything apart. Guys like Madre Harper was also in the Senior Bowl. Dane Jackson was also in the Senior Bowl, cornerback from Pitt. There's a couple safeties as well. J.R. Reed from Georgia. Jalen Elliott, the safety from Notre Dame. He's still able. They talk with him over FaceTime. Geno Stone, the safety from Iowa, is a PFF favorite. He's also available. Other than that, they could dip back into edge rushing and get a guy a little bit more versatile than Khalid Kareem. There's Derek Derek Tuska, I think is his name, from North Dakota State. Wow. Azur Kamara as well, the edge rusher from Kansas. He was also at the Senior Bowl. So I think it's going to be on defense. I think it's going to be one of those position groups.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you guys. I think it's probably going to be a defensive back. I do see the wisdom in maybe getting another skill position player, whether that's a pass catching tight end. I got to look and see if the tight end from Washington, I think it's Hunter Bryant. I don't know if he ended up getting.
He's still there.
Yeah, he's still there. I think last I checked, Eno Benjamin, the Arizona State running back, that could be an option depending on what they're feeling about the Mixon situation and how Rodney Anderson fits into things with his injuries. I mean, that's stuff that I wonder about. There's a lot of talk, and I know John loves this player, Thad Moss. A lot of fans want Thaddeus Moss.
There's an LSU tight end available that I would like to draft. His name's Steven Sullivan.
At seventh round pick, it's kind of like, if you want to go that route, it's a seventh round pick. So no harm, no foul.
Do you want a tight end who runs 4.6 or 5 flat?
Right. To me, that's why the kid from Washington makes some sense. If you're going to look, if you really want a kid that is maybe has a little more upside and at that position and can give you a little bit more pass catching ability, those routes would be preferable to me than Thad. Really, the only thing Thad Moss brings is the relationship factor to Joe Burrow and the rapport that they've built there. So that's kind of the big upside there. But did AJ Green get picked? Not that
He
AJ.
did not.
Yeah, that was another one I think that wasn't he a Senior Bowl guy, John, and a guy that you
Yes.
previewed in one of our prospect watches, I think.
That was before I realized he wasn't any good. But he is still available.
Okay. Yeah, that was a guy I remember we talked about a bit. So we are a few minutes away here from the Bengals taking the clock. I think it's at pick 212 or 213 right now. They're a few picks away. How do you feel that the Bengals have set themselves up roster-wise? I mean, are you comfortable with what they've done? And going back to an earlier question I had for you, Matt, do you think Adeniji has a shot to, based on his skill set, do you think they're going to give him a shot to win a starting position? Does he have the ability right away to win a starting position on that offensive line? Or do you think he's a developmental guy that maybe takes over for Bobby Hart a year or two from now once Hart's contract is up? His beautiful contract they signed him to last offseason.
I think he's probably a developmental guy. And, I would like to stick him on one side of the field and let him learn guard and tackle on that side. And I don't particularly care what side it is, because I think you also kind of want to you got to think about Fred Johnson too. So if Fred Johnson's really going to be pushing Hart, and maybe Fred Johnson's taking some reps at the right tackle spot, so maybe then you want to play around with Akeem over in the left. And then, that's the setup too, is that you try him at tackle because the more valuable position. If he can do that, great. But then, you have the situation where you're kind of cross-training him a little bit and getting him ready to potentially bump inside to guard. And ideally, Johnson or Adeniji do impress. Does Hart only have 1 year left on his contract?
I think he's got two, including.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah.
So but yeah, maybe one of them impresses enough that you feel comfortable moving on, and then you keep both of them. The other one's the swing guy, and Fred Johnson already started 2 games at left tackle for the Bengals. So if he's if you teach him right, that's kind of building in a little bit of swing potential with him. Also, just of note, because I think they feel a little bit better about Bobby Hart than we do. And, Fred Johnson did play guard for the Steelers. That's what the Steelers had him listed as. So I think that's kind of a dark horse to win one of those jobs. I really think it's the right side to me that's up for grabs. Because, and correct me, and I think you guys are a little bit more tied in with the breaking news stuff than I am. But to me, Su'a-Filo has spent the majority of his career playing left guard, and it's not like either one's solid. So I would let Su'a-Filo compete at left guard, and I think Su'a-Filo is going to be a good starter for you. Not great, but I think he's probably going to be pretty good in that spot. At this very moment, I probably feel better about him than anybody else at guard. So I probably plug him in there, and then maybe let the Ohio State guys compete for the right guard, and see how that goes, and see how everybody looks at tackle, and then maybe you bump one of the other guys inside to compete for the guard spot if it's not looking good.
Yeah, and
I will say this about Adeniji. At the Senior Bowl when he was with the North team, it wasn't with the South team that the Bengals coached. He was only at guard there, and I think he played most of his practice snaps at right guard, and he actually fared a little bit better than that in terms of just overall win rate. So I do like that the Bengals are not sticking him at pigeonholing him at like one position, but I do agree with Matt. If you're gonna go back and forth between guard and tackle, keep it on one side, probably keep it on the right side, where he was actually a little bit better at the Senior Bowl.
Speaking of the Senior Bowl, John, the Bengals, I believe I saw from our good friend Ben Baby, who joined us on the program a couple of weeks ago, he put out a tweet saying that the Bengals have selected 3 players from the Senior Bowl, of which they have 3 of their 6 so far, of which they have had some significant exposure to. I don't think that's a surprise, because that, as we mentioned, they use their coaches more heavily probably than most teams in the direct scouting approach. And obviously that was kind of one of the major events that teams were able to use in terms of face-to-face stuff because of the COVID crisis. So not really a surprise there, right?
Well, yeah. And so Wilson, Davis-Gaither, and Adeniji all played in the Senior Bowl. Khalid Khalid Kareem was also there. He just couldn't play because he was dealing with a shoulder injury. So I think he also got some time to spend with the Bengals coaching staff, at least talking to them.
I think on that note, I tweeted this probably like yesterday, but I think it's interesting. I'm sorry, this probably would have been day one, but I think it's interesting. Mims and Josh Jones were two guys that not a lot of people were talking about prior to the Senior Bowl, and they got a lot of buzz after the Senior Bowl, and then they both slipped a lot farther in the draft than when we thought they were going to. So I don't know what that means. Like, I'm not trying to imply anything,
right.
but I just think it's interesting to note that. I mean, John, you were there. Would you say that those are probably the guys that got the two biggest bumps and had the most buzz that people weren't really talking about going into, but were coming out?
Easily. And if it wasn't Jones at tackle, it was Ben Barge, who went into, I think, the fourth round because he also suffered an injury as well. Yeah. Those slides make no sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, we lost somebody. I kind of wonder if, you hear about him at the Senior Bowl, and it'd be interesting to look at the guys that were really popular in years past. But I wonder if Team C thinks at the Senior Bowl, and then it's like, all right, well, we got to bring this guy in and see it for ourselves. And maybe they didn't trust it because they didn't get the double check or something. I don't know, but it's just kind of interesting that those guys were so big. And people talk about Mims. I liked Mims's film. I thought Mims's film was good. I don't think he plays as fast as he ran in the track. But some people will say, well, nobody liked him until after the combine. I don't think that's true at all. I think the people that got into Baylor film were already on him. Maybe they weren't talking about him as a first rounder, but yeah, just kind of interesting that those guys slipped and they were both really popular at the Senior Bowl.
We are one pick away from, I feel like kind of a moron because I think I was saying 217 a couple of times. It's actually 215 that the Bengals are picking, and they are on deck here. The Seattle Seahawks are on the clock, and then we have the Bengals' final pick of the seventh round here to kick that off. And, there's no, if there was anything to be gained from an Andy Dalton trade, they've kind of run out of time there. I don't think another seventh round pick really warrants even maybe doing the deal. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I guess you get something out of it, but that this looks to be their last pick here. A couple of guys we've been asked about before the Bengals make their last selection, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on them quickly. John, KJ Hill, I've been told is still maybe available, the Ohio State receiver. And then, of course, the big tackle that has had just the most up and down pre-draft process I can think of in a while, Trey Adams, the big tackle out of Washington, injury issues and all kinds of other stuff is hurting his stock. What do you think about those two guys as possibilities for the Bengals at 215 here?
Who was the first one again? I'm sorry.
KJ Hill. Did he get?
Right.
Yeah.
He's still available. I think if you want to take a chance on Hill, now's the time. He doesn't excite you a lot because he's on the older side. He's just basically a slot only guy. He doesn't really have a lot of outside experience or outside ability. You can use him on special teams as well. So this makes sense for him if you need a receiver of that form. But I think with what they have right now, they have like 11 guys that wide receivers. So he doesn't bring them anything that they don't already have. With Adams, it's just a scenario where I just don't want to deal with it. Like, he could be good, but an athlete of that caliber, which is awful, it's rare for him to. It's rare for them to be anything more than just like okay starters at the absolute best. I can't speak on any of the character concerns that came up at the combine where he said his best attribute was his genitals or something like that. But I would just rather not deal with it.
That's putting it diplomatically. The Bengals pick is in. The selection is Marcus Bailey, the inside linebacker of Purdue.
That's Matt's guy.
That's great. I tell you what, like Bailey, Akeem Gaither, and Logan Wilson. Like, I don't actually have this ranked out, but those are three of the best coverage linebackers in this draft. Like,
yeah, easily.
Bailey played 2 games this year, and then he blew out his knee. I think I was on a pod with one of you when I mentioned this, but there was an interview with Zach Taylor where he said something about he saw a guy who was injured working out on YouTube, and I was like, oh, it's definitely Marcus Bailey.
Yeah.
Because it was like the day that video came out, we all saw it. But that's awesome. I mean, again, completely rechanging that room, and you're kind of hedging your bet with Akeem Gaither. You got two guys that are coming off injuries. I mean, maybe it's a redshirt year thing for Bailey, like they had last year with the running back from Oklahoma, whose name I always screw up. It's Anderson, right?
Rodney Anderson, yeah.
Anderson, yeah.
I always want to call him something else, but so I mean, yeah, you're hedging your bets nicely there, and yeah, I mean those are all guys that are really good in coverage. That's pretty exciting, I think.
You look at the stats here just before John, before that injury that stopped his senior year short of 2 games, 13 and a half sacks in 2017, 2018 combined. You got 20 tackles for loss, an interception apiece. Kind of does a little bit of everything, and a guy that makes you more versatile on that defense. Lou Anarumo's got to be a pretty hyped up guy with this offseason, I got to tell you.
Oh, absolutely, and I think we should have known something. So at least a double dipping at the position was going to come with how free agency turned out. They wanted to address it, but unfortunately, the prices didn't match with the guys they were going after. Bynes is a perfect placeholder, veteran to kind of groom these now 3 rookies that they're going to have. But yeah, I think this spells the end of it. Definitely Hardy Nickerson, probably Jordan Evans as well. They probably only keep 5 of these guys, and 2 of them are already on the roster. And now you add 3 rookies who, I mean, this is assuming that Bailey is going to be 100% for whatever football returns. Hopefully he is, and hopefully he's able to stay healthy throughout whatever offseason program that they have. But Matt's exactly right. Like these three types of linebackers who are all very productive wherever they were at, who all have the capacity to be assets in space and in coverage. It's exactly what they needed for what they want to do. And I think at this point, exactly, like it's the exact same risk they're taking with Rodney Anderson, who was a worthy risk last year and late in the 6th round. Marcus Bailey is a worthy risk in the 7th round, especially for how bad they need bodies at that position.
Marvin Lewis would never.
No.
all these coverage linebackers, Marvin Lewis would never. But the other thing about that I think is great about Bynes too is both Bailey. We're really Bailey's issue is tackling is in the box, and he played a lot out of the box. Akeem Davis-Gaither, like John mentioned before, was essentially a small edge. So we've seen some traits, but he hasn't really played in the box either. So, Bynes gives you that guy that's a little bit more experienced. I mean, when you're on the goal line, if it's a definite running situation, things like that, and you want a guy who you can trust to get off blocks and fill, from guards, things like that, and fill interior gaps. He's definitely right now better than those 2 guys at doing that. And it's interesting that they went out and brought in that guy and then brought in, at least 2 linebackers. Logan can do some of that stuff, I think, but brought in some linebackers that are completely different than him through the draft.
Well, I think the fan complaints about them not addressing the linebacker position can maybe stall for a little bit. I mean, almost half of their entire draft class this year is comprised of linebackers and guys that can do a lot of different things. And by the way, they got guys who can you've got kind of your do-it-all guy in Logan Wilson. You've got your coverage guy in Marcus Bailey, and you've got the guy who brings some pass rush ability and other play in space ability in Akeem Davis-Gaither. So you've got some athletic guys that can do a lot of different things. They've ignored that position seemingly with guys that can cover and do a lot of different things for a long time, and now they've got 3 guys there. Quick, we're gonna get out of here in just a couple of minutes now that the pick is in. And again, that pick at 215 was Marcus Bailey, the linebacker out of Purdue. So the Bengals completely revamped that linebacker room and really needed to. That was probably their biggest position of need. And they, we wondered why they didn't do much at it aside from Josh Bynes in free agency, probably because they had planned on taking a number of, maybe not 3 right while they were looking at it in free agency, but they knew they were probably going to be taking 2 guys at least in the draft, and that's what they did. Guys, first blush, I know you may or may not like the idea of doing a grade, but if you wanted to put a grade on these 7 picks, John. What would you give this draft? I'm seeing perfect draft and above average draft and all that kind of stuff in our comments. Where would you slate this draft class for the Bengals?
For what it's worth, when I put together this board that I've been keeping up with, they chose they chose one A player for me. They chose 3 day 2 players and then 3 early day 3 players. So when you have 7 picks, all at the top of the first round, that's basically about as good as you could expect to do. Again, draft grades right after they happen are kind of weird to me. And I also like to input in value long-term potential and how great could these guys actually become. So the fact that they didn't draft, in my opinion, like multiple potential Pro Bowlers, it kind of hurts them in that regard. But I think they drafted at least a number of potential future starters on this team. And with only 7 picks, without having any extra trade capital from trading Andy Dalton, they're trading back even when they wanted to trade back. I think they did about as well as you could have, and I think that warrants probably an A- or B+.
Matt?
Yeah, I'd say it's about the range. I give it a B+. I think all the players they picked, with the exception of Burrow, were, well, early on, they were kind of maybe a half round earlier than I might have thought they were. Don't get me wrong, I like getting him there, but Higgins was a guy I wasn't quite as high on. We'll see, because it's one of those things. But I had him in round 2, but it wasn't quite that high on him compared to some other guys. Logan Wilson, honestly, I had a cluster of linebackers in the second round, but I thought the very top of the second round was a little high, although some of those guys were starting to go, so it was probably good. But and then you turn around, and on day 3, I thought that it was great value, because Davis-Gaither, we were expecting before he got injured to go to the combine, run something ridiculous, and be in the conversation for 33. So that guy's healthy, and we got him in the 4th round. Awesome.
Yeah.
Like we said, I got to look a little bit more into Khalid, but he's a guy that was where I ranked him was right where they took him. And then I think Akeem and Bailey here at the end are guys that I saw as 4th or 5th rounders. So they're getting real good value on those guys towards the end. Maybe just a touch early at the beginning, but both guys I'm really high on. So I'm kind of nitpicking on the value, and honestly, I'm doing that because this is immediately after the draft. I'm trying not to get caught up in the emotion, but I'm very happy right now. So I'm trying not to ride that too much and get too excited about it. But I feel really good about where this came out. I'm excited to take a deep dive and do some of these film rooms and look at a little bit more into them. But it's interesting too how there seems to be a plan, and you can see where a lot of these guys will fit. We talked about the kind of the rotation with the linebackers. I think it's going to be interesting too to see how hopefully Bell and Williams fit in. Sean Williams was a guest on Orange is the New Black, and was talking with those guys about how he felt a little out of sorts this year. I thought he played very well in 2018, to be honest with you. And this year, it's been a lot of talk about him being a linebacker. Like, let's get a safety and turn him into a linebacker. And that came up with Von Bell. And yes, he does line up in that position. And yes, he was essentially a dime linebacker for them. When the third safety would come in. But it doesn't sound like he was really comfortable in there. And we did see him have some struggles. So being able to let him be a more true safety, I think, hopefully we'll see a little bit more out of him. So seeing, and like the production that he's had has mirrored Bates, but we don't think about it because we see the negative plays. But so it'll be interesting to see how they work in those safeties with these linebackers. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, this is, for me, it's probably just first blush B+, right around that area for me. Very good draft. One of the better ones I can remember in recent memory. I think I look back, this is one of the ones I've been most excited about. And not just because they had the high picks, but the guys they ended up picking, I'm pretty pretty revved up about, and I think this is one of the best. I look back to like 2012 when they got Marvin Jones and Georgia Loca on that third day in that class, and I was pretty revved up then. And this class reminds me of that a little bit, and what they did on day 3, how they were able to get some good value on some of those players. So,
and looking at last year, like just comparing to last year, there were 2 moments last year when it was like, what are they doing?
Right.
Right. And we all talk about Sample, but also Deshaun Davis. I mean, John, what do the analytics say about that guy's measurables?
Yeah, it wasn't very fast.
But he was but he was a team captain and ran the defense and all that stuff that we saw with some of these guys, but didn't have the athletic profile. So there wasn't a bad moment. I think T. Higgins might have surprised us because many of us were very high on Mims, myself included. And Anthony, I'm willing to bet you would have picked Pittman on that pick over T. Higgins. Yeah, but but it's like still you see it. Like that was a guy that had first round buzz. Like you get it. He's maybe not the guy you pick, but you get it. So there are no like what are they doing moments, and man, that's a low threshold, but it's a positive anyway.
In all honesty, this draft kind of reminds me of 2016, and it's obviously much different because you're getting a franchise quarterback and you're not just picking a cornerback in the late first round. But then in that draft, they had 7 picks, and I don't think they really made a bad one throughout it. And they had basically every one of those guys make it on the roster for multiple years. Unfortunately, Christian Westerman never really worked out. Nick Vigil never turned into a solid starter, but he gave you valuable snaps. Tyler Boyd and William Jackson are looking to be – Tyler Boyd's already one of the highest paid players at his position. William Jackson's hoping to be that next year. Andrew Billings turned into a solid starter at nose tackle. Cody Core and Clayton Fedulum, Cardell Cruz at special teams. All 7 picks ended up doing something in the NFL to some degree. And I think that this class has potential to do that. But it even better and more important scale because one of them is a franchise quarterback. One of them is hopefully the number 1 or future number 2 weapon you hope to groom with him. So it could be a better version of that, in my opinion.
The one thing I don't want to belabor the point on it because we talked about it on last night's show, but the one thing in looking at more of T. Higgins last night after the pick and thinking on it, I mean, the what the Bengals wanted out of that position and a guy they wanted is a guy who could stretch the field, a guy who's got great hands, and a guy who will win jump ball opportunities, red zone opportunities. You can throw fade routes to him. The back shoulder throws, credit to John Talk bringing up that point, with that being a strength of Burrow, those back shoulder throws that he made so many times. That's where this kid, I think, comes into play. I liked Michael Pittman just from a standpoint. I liked him a little bit more than Higgins, but I understand that pick, and I am good with it. And I think that, that's also a guy that could potentially rise up and be one of their starting guys, once AJ Green's moves on and whatnot. Let's get out of here, guys. We've gone. I told you we would do a short show, and here we are almost an hour in, of course.
I was like a half an hour before the pick came in. Anyway.
Oh, I know. We couldn't really help that one. I guess we started a little early, but that's okay. This has been awesome, and I thank you both for your time. I know it's been a busy weekend for both of you, and I am really, really excited about the direction of this football team, and I think it's going to start paying dividends not only right away, but definitely in 21 and 22. Thanks a bunch, guys. Go catch Matt's Chalk Talk episodes. I'm sure he's going to have quite a few pumping out with the new picks that the Bengals have put up this weekend. John and I will be doing more breakdowns. Hopefully all 3 of us will be doing some interviews, not only with the crop of these players, we're working on some of that, but others as the summer progresses. Keep it to us. iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Megaphone, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and CincyJungle.com. For Matt Minich, John Sheeran, I'm Anthony Cosenza. Thanks for sticking with us all weekend long. You guys have been so great to us in our shows. Appreciate it. We'll see you soon.